Interview with Coach Zoey Panzarino. Zoey and I had the opportunity to sit down earlier and have a discussion about a concept that she coined and made a post about on Instagram called informed dieting. So here's the post, and we will tag Zoey's name right here. That's her Instagram handle. Go ahead and check her out. Check out the post. And basically what Zoey was saying was that, there's a difference between how your body essentially feels when you are eating a highly processed food diet versus a whole food diet. And obviously we do utilize the modality that is flexible dieting within our coaching system. However, it's very important to be able to pay attention to specifics of how your body actually feels when you are eating more processed foods over eating more whole foods. Now, Zoey does work within the confines of more of the competition preparation, specifically for bikini and posing. So a lot of the time, when you're trying to create the best results possible and you're trying to bring everything in for the show, minor details really do make such a big difference. And that's something that we talked about in this discussion today as well. For those of you who don't know about Zoey, let me go ahead and give you a little bit of background on her. So she's been a nutrition coach for Metabolic Evolution now for about the last year, maybe a little bit more than a year, but roughly around a year. And before that, Zoey and I worked together for over 3.5 years, competing in over 13 competitions where she earned professional status as a lifetime natural athlete in the NGA first, and then went on to have one hell of a season in the NPC, where she ultimately earned her IFBB Pro card at NPC Nationals as a lifetime natural athlete. And ever since then, Zoey has been working with clients here at Metabolic Evolution, prepping girls for shows, helping us with our posing needs, and all of those things. And she's been doing such an amazing job. Zoey is a dear friend of mine, and it brings me immense happiness to have her here in this video where Zoey and I sit down and talk about the concept of informed dieting. So without further ado, guys, here's the video.
And by definition, how would you define what informed dieting is?
So in my opinion, I guess informed dieting is basically incorporating a variety of nutrients into your diet with an emphasis on whole foods as the main source. It's, similar to flexible dieting, but rather than, implementing so many prepackaged and processed foods, we're focusing on whole foods.
Okay, awesome. And your post on Instagram, basically, was it more applied to everybody as a whole, or was it more applicable to more of like an athlete or a general population?
So my post specifically was referring more to competitors. However, I think it can be applied to anyone who has a strict goal or deadline that they're working towards.
Let's talk a little bit about the history of kind of how If It Fits Your Macros kind of started, and then we can kind of elaborate from there. So I believe it was back in 2011 or 2012, the first time I ever heard this, if it fits your macros, eat it. And everybody was like, oh, that makes sense. And then within kind of the evidence-based society back then, it was very, very small. Our evidence-based community was tiny, and people started to eat things like Pop-Tarts and various other food sources. And during competition prep, what I noticed was that people tried to carry this over into their prep. And from more of an anecdotal perspective, I could always feel when I put processed foods into my body. I could just feel that my body wasn't operating as it was supposed to. I felt like my training energy wasn't as good. So the idea that you've coined, could you kind of elaborate a little bit more on, how you've kind of came up throughout your competitive journey and how just the feeling of eating more processed foods versus whole foods has affected you?
Absolutely. So my first competition season in 2016, I definitely took IIFYM to the max. My high carb days, I loved being able to fit in ice cream and waffles and creating fun treats because it was high carb day and I could. While I achieved stage lean conditioning, that first season was nowhere near where it was the subsequent 2 seasons after that. And it's really, I think, because I took more, care and respect into the food that I was putting into my body as an athlete. And the further I got into a deficit, I made sure that I was providing my body with as many nutrients and minerals and fiber and vitamins that I could to support not only my performance, but my recovery, my immune system, energy, everything.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think it was that why did you feel like you had to kind of transition into that? What was that aha moment? Was it just a feeling? Was it, maybe how your performance was in the gym? What was it specifically that kind of took you away from that? let's see how creative, how artificial we can be with these treats into, focusing more on like a whole nutrient dense diet?
I probably would say it had a lot to do with trial and error and just being more in tune with my body. So learning how I felt after certain foods. And it's not to say like there are certain whole foods that my body just doesn't process or digest well. And you learn that you can't incorporate those as much into your diet either. So just through trial and error, and I think really working through that reverse diet I did in 2016 into 2017 really was like that best time frame I've ever had, where I was kind of able to stay lean, get my calories up, and like learn exactly what worked for my body to maintain like an optimal physique.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you just kind of evolved as an athlete.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this actually brings up something that I think we could elaborate on a little bit more. Is that the other day when I had asked you about your post, you were pretty much, you had said like, Usain Bolt doesn't put like, he doesn't eat only cereal or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think that that's such a true statement. I think that oftentimes, people will choose to put the worst gasoline in their sports performance car, right?
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about maybe athletic performance and just some of the positives that you've gotten out of incorporating more of a high nutrient rich diet.
Well, to your point, I completely agree with that. I think what I said before, I was like, well, you don't see LeBron James eating Pop-Tarts or donuts like on the side court. Like,
Sure.
you don't. But it's really just noticing the strength that you can have, the endurance aspect. I think it's like the stabilization of energy throughout the day. So by incorporating more whole foods into my diet, I don't notice those like 2-3 p.m. slumps in the same way. I don't feel like I'm getting such like spikes in blood sugar and decreases in crashes. Like I'm able to maintain my energy throughout the entire day. So whether I have to train in the morning or, something happens and I have to train at 6 or 7 p.m., I roughly have the same amount of energy.
I can attest to that 100%. As interesting as it is, once I kind of converted more to, I would even say probably something like a 90-10, 95-5, ratio in regards to whole foods versus processed foods. When I eat something that's high carbohydrate with like that is processed, I will immediately feel all of that insulin just like dumping into my bloodstream. And it causes me to feel extremely lethargic. And I would also say that those types of foods actually make me hungrier faster than, say, if I was to have something like a potato or a bowl of oatmeal or even some form of rice. So let's go ahead and elaborate a little bit on that, because obviously we know that we have clients who they're just carb snackers, right? And typically when they're carb snacking, they're just grabbing whatever's in a package. Oh, it fits my macros, I'm fine. It's a processed food item. Let's get it. Let's get out of the house and let's grab another one for later on. Yeah. So what do you think is essentially that concept that they're just snacking on these processed carbohydrate sources? Do you actually think that it's actually signaling a hunger response faster than, say, if you were to eat a whole micronutrient dense meal?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think what I mentioned in my post was the fact that does it take a lot more time and effort to, meal prep whole meals rather than, grabbing something from the pantry, throwing it in the bag and go? Absolutely. But again, that's kind of why I was targeting more like the competition prep athletes, because you need to take it to that next level. But in general, absolutely. I mean, if you're eating a, bag of Cheez-Its, for instance, like that is going to not keep you full for very long. Maybe it's going to taste good for 5 minutes. It even lasts 5 minutes, but you're going to get hungry faster. And I think that also kind of plays into like some protein bars as well. And we look at those like, oh, this is the healthy choice. And like, don't get me wrong, I love my protein bars, but they don't keep me full for more than like 20 minutes. And if you look at the breakdown of those calories, if I had chicken, potatoes, and something else with it, that would keep me full a lot longer than the protein bar would.
The fact that we actually get hungrier faster when we are eating these processed food items, I believe that there's likely a direct connection with the thermic effect of food, right? So if we were to have like a very whole, like a whole food meal, whether that be, let's just say potato, steak, veg, fish, potato, whatever, that style of meal would essentially break down over a slower period of time because it's going to keep you satisfied for longer, versus having something like a protein bar that's essentially going to break down faster. Now, the fact that these protein bars and these processed food items are actually breaking down faster, I believe that actually yields to a lower thermic effect of food. So as you're eating this meal, obviously you're increasing thermodynamics, and your body requires a specific amount of energy to break down a specific food item, right? So when you're having a lot of these processed food items, it's likely that your body is not actually having to work as hard to break down the protein bar as it is to break down a lean piece of protein, a carbohydrate, and a vegetable. That leads us into something else, and it's a much larger question, because whether you're a physique athlete, whether you're just a stay-at-home mom, you're a businessman, whatever you are, if you're kind of constantly having these processed snacks, it's actually leading to you being hungrier faster. How does that inability to reach that level of satiety, how does that actually correlate to adherence?
Yes, absolutely. And that's one thing that if I have a new client working with me, and before I adjust their macros in the first place, I look at their level of adherence and their food sources and the quality of the food they're getting in. So if they're constantly going over their macros and I see that they're fitting in some sort of fast food every day, they're really relying on these like snacky type foods to get them through the day. As soon as we swap out their quality of food and implement more whole foods, then they'll likely come back and say, man, I'm having a really hard time hitting my macros. Well, these were the same numbers that you were just overeating every day. So really taking a look at that in terms of like satiety can help just your overall progression.
Absolutely. I think in essence, like your ability to keep your body satisfied with whole, like micronutrient rich foods obviously carries over into your ability to adhere to your plan. Because if you're doing this, you're going to be less hungry, less often. Most of the time, I kind of call it like the art of snacking. And a lot of people, when they're in this art of snacking, you'll oftentimes hear, especially with general population clients where we're trying to set them up on the most ideal program for them, they'll say, oh, I eat breakfast, I eat lunch, I eat dinner, and then I have 2 snacks in the middle of the day. It's like, well, let's go ahead and investigate what you're having for breakfast. And in some cases, like they are just grabbing a bar, they're grabbing a shake, and they're out the door. So in essence, they actually feel like they need kind of like that middle of the morning snack for another bump in blood sugar so that they can kind of, push that until they have a real meal at lunch. And then they're eating that. And so we do have to actually investigate our clients' food logs, and we have to see what they're actually eating, because those specific foods they're eating could be causing them to actually be hungrier faster. If you guys haven't had a chance to check out the video I did on why you get so hungry, it's basically Hunger 101 and how your hypothalamus regulates your hunger through the hunger hormone ghrelin. What I want to bring to the audience is just kind of like some take-home points. So as a coaching staff here at Metabolic Evolution, and then to all of our listeners out there, how do we actually fix this? And like habitually, how can we change our habits to kind of cater more towards a whole food diet? Because for the last 10 years, we've been told, right, that, as long as it fits your macros, you can eat it. So how do we actually transition away from this concept of if it fits your macros, eat it, into understanding that you're getting so many more micronutrients and so many more health benefits if you can eat a whole food diet?
Biggest thing is I'm not trying to be a no fun food person. I'm not a food Nazi. Like, I'm a foodie, guys. Like, I love to eat that kind of stuff. But I think my mentality with it is I have to look at it like, this is a treat. This is not something that is a necessity to my body right now. I mean, of course, making sure I'm getting my protein, carbs, and fats in every day, that is a necessity. But as an athlete, I want to make sure that I'm fueling my body with the best I possibly can so that I can look and feel my best every day. And that way, when I do incorporate those treats into my diet, there's less food anxiety, less food guilt around it. I enjoy it. And then I get right back on to the foods that make me feel my best. And one analogy that I use with a lot of my clients is look at your macros like a bank account. You don't need to be going YOLO every day and blowing your entire bank account on whatever you want to. I mean, you have to be smart. You have to pay your bills, you have to put money aside, all that kind of stuff. And that's what you're doing essentially with food.
Absolutely. Yeah. So like the treats are like your own personal spending money.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay, cool. Yeah. I would even also say, it's like, just because you can eat a specific thing, it doesn't always mean you should. And something that I oftentimes tell a lot of my clients, anybody who works with me for a competition prep. They know that I typically prioritize more of like a whole food diet just because I do see the benefits in it. But something to elaborate on there is, you know, leading with these healthy habits of, you know, trying to get our clients to reach more for whole food items, just for the fact that they can actually help you improve your health. Now, if we're constantly reaching for snacks and we constantly live by this kind of if it fits your macros lifestyle, which again, it has its purpose, right? Like
Yes.
Zoe said, these are all like treat foods. And let's just say, for instance, at the end of the day, guys, look, I have 4 kids. All right. There's so many snacks in my house. I come home at the end of the day, my daughter always asks me, Daddy, sit down on the couch with me. Can you have a bowl of ice cream? I say, absolutely, of course. Because I know that during the day, I've eaten like an adult. I bring my food to work. I pack everything, you know, accordingly. And I save some calories for the end of the day so that I can enjoy that specific food item.
Yes.
Now, I think that within society, the culture, though, is a bit different, right? So I actually want to take this and I want to transition it more to like the Gen Pop and like the people that really need the help. Because I think that that's really where the impact can occur, is not only on the physique side within getting like, you know, very, very detailed shredded. And it could be the difference between first and third, like, you know, how many snacks did you have during this prep versus the person who ate a whole food diet the entire prep. But on the other side of that, you know, how do we actually kind of start to change the habits of a lot of people within the general population clients? And then maybe if you want to go ahead and add on to that, that would be fantastic. So obviously, I think that society has kind of set people up in a sense, right? If you go into the middle of the grocery store, everything's in a box. Everything is so convenient. You can just grab the box, you can open the box, you can tear the wrapper, and you can eat it, right? It's a convenience factor. And it just so happens to be that a lot of people don't have the tendency to have the value in themselves to think beyond that. This is enough. This is fine for me. So what I essentially try to do with a lot of our clients is, first and foremost, when they start with us, I try to get them to eat 3 whole meals per day, right? So again, what we need to do is transition the habit from, all right, we're just kind of grabbing and going, we're just snacking on processed food items. Let's go ahead and just start with 3 whole meals per day, consisting of a fat source, a carb source, a protein source, a fiber source, a fruit, and a vegetable. Right? Easy enough, 3 times per day. Now, essentially what you're doing for that person is, over the course of maybe a week, 2 weeks, you then actually start to develop the habits where they're no longer waking up and grabbing that quick to eat bar, whereas instead they're actually waking up and they're valuing themselves enough to cook themselves a healthy breakfast. They value themselves enough to have made a meal probably the day before to take to lunch for work. Then they value themselves enough to come home, cook a nice meal for their family if they're, you know, if they're a mother or a father. So would you care to kind of add on to that, and just maybe what are some things that you do with your clients if you notice that maybe they're just grabbing for the snack cupboard a bit too often?
So I tend to do the same thing. I really like focus on just small habits over time. And I like the checklist approach too, even if it's not in every meal. Let's say it's okay, you're going to have veggies 3 to 4 times a day. You're going to have fruit at least 1 to 3 times a day, protein 4 times a day. And it's just like a checklist. And people love to feel like they've accomplished something. So if you break it down into small little accomplishments throughout the day, they've set themselves up for a win, and they go to bed saying like, awesome, let's keep this rolling. And then another thing is, I look at what are those foods that they're gravitating towards, and let's say, you know, how could we make a more whole food version of that? Or if you're really, you know, you have this sweet tooth, what are different fruits or different natural sources that we can, you know, achieve that same thing that your body thinks it's craving through whole foods?
Absolutely. I absolutely love those. So hopefully, you know, those of you who are listening to this, if you happen to maybe have any clients or anything, or maybe you yourself is having a hard time kind of getting away from the snacking. And as I sit here and I talk to Zoe about this, I actually notice a lot of these correlations with people in my family, specifically my kids. So like, it's like process, they love the process stuff. And now that I'm thinking back and I'm reflecting on it, I'm like, man, like I need to go home and change this. But hopefully you guys got a lot out of this video, just in regards to the kind of the shift of, you know, obviously keeping some treats within your diet, making sure that, you know, you have something to look forward to, something, maybe that's an ice cream for you, maybe that's some kind of cookie or something like that. But every single meal throughout the duration of your day should not be a processed food. So wrapping all of this up kind of in review, Zoe, would you mind just kind of highlighting a couple key points maybe that you wanted to make? And then we'll essentially close it out. And I will actually provide our listeners some research articles correlated to whole foods versus processed foods and the thermic effect of those foods. And then a recent research study that just came out regarding a metabolic ward, where there was actually, you know, they pretty much had 10 men, 10 women, but I'll go into detail in the description down below. And Zoe, in closing,
really focus on fueling your body with the absolute best nutrients that you can, making sure that you're meeting your fiber requirements every day. You're getting in those minerals, those vitamins, everything that your body needs to not only look its best, but feel and perform its best as well. I think that's like the biggest takeaway here, is really just having that respect for yourself, that you're treating your body like a Ferrari and you're going to put a premium gasoline in there.
I like that. Absolutely. And I agree with that 100%. So guys, wrapping up, I just wanted to say thank you so much, Zoe, and acknowledge you for doing such an amazing job with all of your clients. Where Coach Zoe does offer nutritional coaching, she also offers posing consultations, and she not only works with competition prep athletes, but she does work with general population clients as well. So Zoe, where can the people find you?
People can find me on Instagram. It's where I'm most active. It's just at Zopans. Yeah, find me there. Follow me. I'll follow you guys back, and let's get on this informed dieting trend together.
All right, awesome. Thank you guys so much for checking out the video. We'll see you in the next one.